Doing today?
Hi, Ramon. I'm doing good, thank you.
I'm happy you're able to join us. I know at my side in New York it's 2 p.m. Eastern, but where you are right now it's a little later than that, right?
Yeah, it's 8 o'clock in Nigeria.
Well, listen, I'm happy you could come on. Again, the name of the podcast is Dream Plan Execute. I look for persons on the podcast, look for people who dream frictionless, plan thoroughly, execute relentlessly. And through the wide scope of the internet and LinkedIn, you
Yeah.
embody that process of dream, plan, execute. And the intent is to just highlight individuals who have produce and continue to produce that mantra. So Mimi, let's just get the persons involved in the podcast aware of what you've done and how you've come to be architectural designer. Let's just start from your upbringing in Nigeria through high school and then work our way to your university experience.
Okay. So my upbringing in Nigeria, well, I probably should start with my name. My name is Mimi. My father is from the middle belt of Nigeria, and my mother is he's from Benue State, and my mother is from Lagos State, which is in the southwest. And I grew up in the north of Nigeria, in Kaduna. So I tend to feel like I have a very multicultural view of the country because I didn't sort of grow up steeped in one particular culture. I grew up in a Christian family, so faith is very important to me. And I grew up a lot around a lot of community. So my family, my friends, these are the values that I embody. So yeah, I don't know, do you want me to go through my education or
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just start with let's start from high school. So in high school, did you play any sports? What was your attraction to design in high school that made you
right?
want to pursue it in college?
Okay. So I went to high school. Well, here we call it secondary school. So you could first go
Yeah,
to nursery, then primary, then secondary school. So my secondary school is called Zamani College, and it was a really good school. Again, very multicultural, people
right.
from all over the place. And no, I don't think I was very good at sports. I mean, we were all required to do sports, but I don't think I was really good. But yes, I was I do feel like I was artistic. I was really good at the technical because we had to do technical drawing, so I was really good at that. Art, we did art in like the first half of secondary school. The
Okay.
second half, I don't know how it goes in say the Caribbeans or in America, but when
It's very
secondary. Okay, because secondary school here is 6 years, and after your first 3 years, when you go into sort of higher secondary school, you are you're kind of told where, well, I wouldn't say told, but you're advised where you should what you should concentrate on, whether it should be the sciences or the arts. So at that point, when I got to the final 3 years and it was like a choice, I was advised to go into to concentrate on the sciences. I should preface this by saying that I come from a family of doctors. My father, rest in peace. He was a gynecologist, my mother, a pediatrician, and my three siblings, all doctors. So I'm a bit of a black sheep in the family.
Yeah, no, so it's so funny because our cultures are very similar in a lot of things. Not
Yeah,
just education, but culturally in what they want their kids to pursue. So, for
yes.
instance, one, or in the Caribbean, we follow the English schooling, so it is called secondary school, and we do have
Okay.
higher levels of secondary school, which we call sixth
Uh-huh.
form. Upper, you have lower six and upper six. I did do technical drawing in school
Oh,
also.
okay.
Yeah, and then we had two versions of technical drawing. You had mechanical and you had architectural, right? So architectural was mainly
Hmm.
built, and then in mechanical they did gears or spokes or different
Oh,
type of mechanical.
really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, no, it's very similar. I had a set square, T squares. We
Yeah,
would
same. We had the same thing as well.
and then we had the white paper that we would do the drawings on,
Uh-huh.
and we would use powder to put on the paper just so that the set square and the T square doesn't get, because you get marked on not just finishing the drawings but how clean
Okay,
your
yeah.
drawings are
Okay,
of the
yeah.
session. So you put the powder on your set square so it just smooths across the paper and you don't get
Yeah.
any dirt on the paper. It was, yeah, I think some of my
So
most
interesting. I never
stressful.
knew this trick with the
Yeah,
powder.
yeah, because our class is so funny. The technical drawing department was, it had louver windows and there was a lot of dust that would get inside the room. So if you
Same,
don't put
same, yeah.
right, so you can use cornmeal, you could use powder, you could use some people
Interesting.
use, yeah, no, we had
I wish I
the
knew
only
this because like we always had the problems with the dirt and the dust thing. You just have to go over your drawings with like an eraser. I literally have never heard of this powder.
Yeah, no, we use powder, we use corn. The problem with cornmeal, so you would tape all edges of your paper, all the edges,
Uh-huh.
so the cornmeal can get underneath the paper because it can, when you
Uh,
start moving your T square, it can
yeah,
rip
and
the,
it warps your paper. Uh-huh.
yeah, it becomes a whole science. You spend 30 minutes just setting up before you actually draw anything on the paper. So
Interesting. That is so cool.
yeah, so we had a good gang of persons who so my school in Jamaica, they produce a lot of medical doctors and lawyers, right? So
Okay.
similarly, if you're doing your parents, they want you to be a lawyer or a doctor, point
Uh-huh.
blank. And I
We're
was
the
like,
same.
yo, I was like, that ain't the Ramon Parchment, that's not for me. So I'm going to do construction. And they were like, what? And everyone at school was like, what? And so, yeah, I ended up taking, because in ninth grade, to your point, most times it's like business, doctor, or lawyer, or whatever else you decide to do, right? And you have to make that
Mhm.
decision in ninth grade because you have to take
Mhm.
or CXCs, which should be, I guess, O levels. And then at that point,
Okay.
you go into E levels. And so you really
Yeah.
need to know what you kind of want to do by that time.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I like art. And I know I can't go to my parents with art because they would just have a conniption. So I was like, what's the cross section of a profession that also allows me to be artistic? And I was like, all right, architecture. So let's just throw that at them and see if it sticks. And they're like, all
Yeah.
right, that will suffice. As soon as you don't want to be a doctor. So yeah, there we go.
It'll be fine. Okay, so you did study architecture,
I ended up studying civil engineering. It's
civil
a quite
engineering. Okay.
So after CSET and or A levels, I ended up going to the US, and my dad was like, "Well, you could do engineering and then go back and get your master's in architecture, or whatever version of that, because of the flexibility of an engineering degree." And
Mm,
like, yeah, okay, let's see how that plays out. So I ended up doing that. Just ended up in construction, and but it helped a lot just having that background in technical drawing. It really did.
yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think our cultures are really, really very similar because when I did get to that point, and when you think about it, it's very wild to be telling 15, 16-year olds to choose their entire path in life. You have to make the choice right now. And I remember when I was at that point, I mean, when I was much younger, I remember saying, "Oh, I want to be a doctor." I even said I want to be a pediatrician, and I lost that dream quite quickly when I just went into school and I just realized that probably my gifts lay more with not art but like technical art. Um,
Right.
and so just like you, like finding something that you can show your artistic ability but still has that technicality to it. And so I do remember when I was advised to go towards the sciences in higher secondary school, and I remember having a meeting with my parents and the principal of the school and telling them no, I felt like I need to go back to the arts, and they were like, you know what, just stick with the sciences. It will give you, just like your father said, kind of like a broader base, and then you can sort of specialize afterwards. So I did that, which is probably good because if I hadn't, I probably wouldn't have been able to study architecture because I wouldn't have been studying physics, and
Right.
chemistry and further mathematics and all that. I would have been doing literature and other sort of artistic course, social science courses. So it did give me a really good base now thinking back at it. And then when it got to the point where I needed to choose like what course to study in university, again, I was at a point where, what am I going to choose? I remember sitting down with my brother. I was thinking about industrial design at the time, but
Right.
between like my brother and my parents, we talked about it and they felt it was still too niche at my age to be like, niching myself into something. And it was better for me to go. So I was thinking about industrial design or architecture, and they were like, it's probably better to go with architecture. It's more broad. And
Right.
so, it gives you more opportunities and you can specialize later on. And I really do appreciate that advice looking back now because I have used my architectural education to sort of understand design in several different ways. So I've done all sorts of design, interior design, furniture design, fashion design, um, architectural design, of course. But having an architectural design education, I think, I don't know if I want to be an advocate for architectural design education, but I think it really provides people, anybody with like a really good design basis because you learn to you learn the principles of design. You learn the history of design and symmetry, asymmetry, how to use light, um, how to plan spaces. You understand design thinking, materiality, all these things. They're useful anywhere you go in the world of design. So I just all that to say that I do appreciate the advice to start off broad and then narrow in with my interests as time went on.
Yeah, no, it's great advice that your parents gave you.
Yeah,
Ultimately, it's like design. I always say that engineering is a mindset and design is a mindset, right? They're just principles of design that you
yeah.
use regardless of what you do. It's almost like right now I'm doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a sport, but I've played sports
Oh,
before, right? And so
interesting.
so I'm in the jiu-jitsu gym and people are rolling with me and they're like, you just naturally move like someone who's done some sort of, you're athletic. That's what the general term would be for
Mm,
athlete because you kind of just know what, you just feel it. You just know because you've done so many sports in your
yeah,
life
it's
what
intuitive at this point.
right. And so that just having that broad sense of design, any sort of
Mm,
design experience, there's principles of design, right? Design development, right? Iterative process of trying something, then it doesn't work, trying it again, keep trying, and then
mhm.
getting back to your stakeholders, making sure your stakeholders are happy with your progress. All those are, regardless of what you do, where you start, you're going to need those principles. So,
Yeah,
that's really
exactly.
what you think was like the hardest part of like being in design when you were going through like your design curriculum. Like what was like that class was like, oh, this is tough for you.
Um, Gosh, I don't I don't mean to sound like cocky, but I didn't really find it difficult. Well, at
I'm
least at
just
first. Yeah, like I didn't find it difficult. And maybe it's just because I think my design abilities are innate. And so okay, you know what? I do have an answer. My design abilities are innate, and so I found it very easy um
yeah,
to to do anything concerning design. I could just coast through.
right,
But you know how you start coasting through in your first year and in your second year and in your third year. And then the third year comes along and then there are all these courses, structural design,
right,
that just become so much more difficult like than the it was like the gap between second year and third year was a lot. It was like what's going on? And because I was so used to just scooting along on my design abilities, my innate design abilities, I hadn't formed habits. I hadn't formed like very strong study habits because I could do it in my sleep, but
Right.
I found that it was like, okay, you're now discovering things that you can't do in your sleep, and you actually have to put the work in. And so it was kind of like a reality check when I got to time. And it was interesting to see people who had sort of created those study habits do very well in places that I was struggling. And it was like, okay, so this is not an issue of whether it's too difficult or not. This is just an issue of you haven't formed the habit of studying properly because you've just been relying on your innate design desires. So yeah, so in school for me, that really was it. It was like, okay, I need to form study habits. And I think that it was in my third year that I sort of became very serious about it, and I wasn't just relying on my innate abilities anymore. So, and that helped me throughout. So even when I finished my bachelor's, because in my country, what you have is it an option? You have the option of serving for a year. So there's this thing called the National Youth Service Corps. So once you graduate, you're posted to like a we have you're posted to a camp, with a bunch of other graduates, and um I don't know, it sounds worse than it is as I'm saying it.
I'm
It's
not,
not
I'm
bad.
not
Like,
against it. No, it's
okay, so
not.
it's
It's
like
fine.
you're posted to a camp, and it's kind of like paramilitary, but not. So like you're posted to a camp, you're taught how to march and just about your country and like entrepreneurial skills and stuff. So it's fun and it's not fun at the same time, depending on where you're posted to. And then at the end of that 3-week camp, you're posted somewhere to work, hopefully in your field. And so the idea is kind of like you serve your country for a year. And
Mm.
so I was posted somewhere in Sokoto, which is also in the north, but it's further up north than here. And I served in the Ministry of Works and Housing for 1 year. And then after that, I went to do my master's. And so all that say that just those study habits helped me when I did end up doing my master's in a different university as well, because I didn't finish my master's. In architecture, you have the option of just going through it as if it's not as if it's one degree, but kind of
Yeah.
just finishing your 6 years at one go, or you can break it, do your bachelor's, do some work experience, and then go do your master's, which is what I did.
Yeah, they do the same thing for engineering students. You could just do
Okay.
your masters in one shot with your undergrad. It's only open to like the really top notch undergrad students, and if they want
Okay.
to take it on, because you are going to be taking on master's classes while taking your undergrad classes,
Oh
and
wow.
so yeah, so you end up taking
So,
like structural analysis, and in the next year or next semester, you're taking advanced structural analysis, which would be the master's
mm,
of it. But you're still taking other undergrad classes, so it can get overwhelming. But there are guys
yeah.
and girls who just they have that innate talent for the scope of work. On one thing I did like what you said, which is, and that's a very nuanced answer, which is like, I understand or you understand you had innate abilities, but it gets to a point where you have to develop good study or disciplined attitude to
Yeah.
things for you to get to the next level. Kobe Bryant,
Yeah.
same similar. He plays ball, but at some point he was like, all right, I'm good, but for me to get really good, I need to train in a disciplined fashion. So I always think, even though I wasn't in the military, I always get along with military folk because I just think innately for you to get good at something, you got to put the work in and you have to do it in a disciplined fashion. For me,
Yeah.
I was never great at school. I always had difficulties with school, but I always was just really determined and disciplined. And that, like I said, a lot of times you have students who are naturally good at something, and then they come across a problem where the innate ability cannot solve it. And
Yeah.
then there's and I saw that a lot in college, right? Where This is the first time dealing with a class that is, you're not the top person in the class anymore, right? You
Yeah.
come in high school and you think you're hot stuff, and then you come into engineering school and then you get your first 30% on the exam, and you could just see the deer in headlights, kind of like, I'm like, all right, I'm used to just not. This is just, this is the day in the life of Ramon. All
Yeah.
right,
You know, this
I
is
have to go
every
to
Tuesday.
every Tuesday. All right, guys, relax. Don't worry. Just take a deep breath. Let me get through this. Let's go to the library. Let's go study. We can't just,
Yeah.
float and think we're going to get this done. So, and it's
Yeah.
just a life skill you learn, because anything else you do in life, you're going to come across situations where you just don't get it, and you just got to work at it till you get good at it, and give
Yeah.
yourself that grace. It's not that you're dumb. It's just you need to just put
Mm.
some work in.
Yeah,
And most
that's
people
true.
give up on a problem or something they're learning because they forget what the process of, you have principles of design, you have principles
Yeah.
of engineering, you have principles of learning, and you're not going to be good at something when you start learning it, just like you weren't good at walking when you were a kid, and then
Yeah.
you forgot how much fun, at the time as a kid you had encouragement as parents, and then as you get older you don't have that same level of someone just telling you you're gonna be all right, and so you just kind of get in your own way and just stop. Whereas as a kid you had encouragement, so finding good friends to encourage you to do new things, and you just try
Yeah.
it. That's why I do it, jiu-jitsu. I go there, I get submitted by people who've been doing this for years. And I think I'm a fit guy, but then you go to a new domain with new people who've been doing it for years, and you're like, all right, I'm
Yeah.
not as good as you think you are. So that's
Yeah.
cool. And so that's when you did the architectural internship, I guess, with the Ministry of Work. Is that time
Yeah,
period?
so yeah, we call it a service year. So, but it essentially is like kind of, would you say it's an internship? Because it's a full working
Mhm. Okay.
arrangement and everything. So yeah, so I did that for a year, and then I worked for about like 8 months, or about 10 months, while I was waiting for this school year to start for masters. And
Okay.
once that started, then I moved. So I did my master's in the university. I studied my bachelor's degree in Covenant University in Ota, Ogun State. So that's in the southwest of Nigeria. And then I did my master's in University of Lincoln in Lincolnshire. That's in the United Kingdom.
Mm.
So yeah. So, and that was another interesting experience. And I always
Right.
tell people, yeah, like I always tell people that if you have the opportunity to study architecture in different places, then take the opportunity. It doesn't even have to be abroad, just in a different state in your country or in a different city, because you'll get the opportunity to see architecture completely different, because the way that it was taught in my master's was worlds apart from the way it was taught in my bachelor's. Just the system of how it was taught, the tools that were used, the communication, and then even being in a different culture, all those things um affected the way that you design, the kind of site analysis that was done. And I feel like those experiences always open your mind up, which can never be a bad thing as a designer. So if you do have the opportunity to study in different places, it doesn't have to be abroad, but just consider your options, because the more experiences that you have, the better a designer you will be, like 100%.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, because just thinking of like fashion or clothing or any design, it's culturally, driven. Like how you would design in the Caribbean
Yeah,
is different than you would design in Russia. Like, the
yeah,
temperature is
exactly.
different, the parameters are different, what the people do is different. So, you're tailoring your scope of work to what the person needs, or the stakeholders need. So that makes sense. And
Exactly. Yeah.
having that broader sense of, like I said, I love sports analogies, because that's just, I love sports. So
Yeah.
Like, playing, you play a different sport and you come back to your own sport. It's still a sport, but you pick up different things. Like, for instance, Serena,
Mm,
like, tennis player ever, right?
mm,
But her work that people, are like insane how her footwork works. She learned from her dad. Her dad had her do boxing. She had her do gymnastics. There's a lot of widening outside of the footwork needed for tennis that she ended up using for
yeah.
her athletic ability on the court. So having that broader sense of just learning a little bit outside of your general, like, this is where I am. This is
Yeah.
what I'm going to learn. So, for instance, I work now nationally in New York, in the U.S. So I travel
Okay.
from New York out. I go to Minneapolis, then I go to Omaha, which is completely worlds apart from New York, right? And
Really?
and things that you learn just being on site in Minneapolis, like, they just do things a little different, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, for instance, we were breaking ground on this data center we're building in the middle of February. Now, the middle of February in Minneapolis, the ground is completely frozen. Like,
Ooh,
you can't. It feels like concrete. You're drilling through concrete. So what they do is they lay out these tarps and they put
okay.
hot glycol or refrigerant inside the tarp, and it's tied to a diesel generator, and they heat it up for like 2 weeks, and that it's called ground thawing. So you thaw the ground out, and then you have 2 weeks
Wow.
to plan exactly what you're going to do, because you can't install a foundation in frozen concrete or frozen soil. It's just not going to have the same properties of compaction that you need, right? So you gotta, in
Yeah.
those 2 weeks while you're waiting, you're phasing your work, and it's move the tarps, dig, 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 put it in, pour the concrete, and then uncompact it, compact
Yeah.
it, and
And it
put.
all needs to be done on time, on schedule.
Yeah. Whereas if
Wow.
you're in Florida, it's a completely your problems are different. Florida, no,
Yeah.
it's dewatering. There's a lot of water in the soil, so now you're pumping water out of your trenches constantly, right?
Mm,
And if I just stayed in New York, you just deal with New York problems. So you
yeah.
don't become a holistic designer or a holistic person who can, globally plan for a problem. So now
Yeah.
I'm happy you did that transition to the UK. So then after you stayed in the UK, you came back to Nigeria to start
Yes, I
working here.
did. So
Okay, nice.
after my master's was 2 years. So once I was done with that and graduation, I came back. I got married, and then
Mhm.
I started looking for work. And
Okay,
so in that process, I did different sort of things. I worked as a furniture designer in a furniture, what was it, like a furniture manufacturing outfit.
okay,
So I did that. I did work as an interior architect, interior design. I did a lot of freelance work as well, just usually like interior work, but also architecture. And then I got work as an architectural designer in a firm, which is what I wanted to do primarily because this is what I'd studied. And so it was nice to do all those things, but like this is what I wanted to do. So I was really happy to get that. But even as working as that, I was always doing other things um, on the side as well. So, but it's interesting to be able to do all those things because it's in doing that sort of what you're really good at, what you're not, what you like, what you don't like, because
um,
I'd always thought, it was in theory interesting to design furniture and all that. But when I did work in a furniture like outfit, and my job was to not only design but detail it out, and like we were a design team attached to a factory, and our design would actually go into the factory and they would make prototypes and bring it back, and you know I realized that I didn't enjoy the detail to which I needed to design a particular like single piece. I enjoyed designing spaces, but like a single piece of furniture, like I wouldn't mind designing the concept for a piece and then someone else did detail it out. But like going into that sort
level
of
up.
yeah, level of innate. It's the detailing isn't the problem because I'm really, really good with details, but it's the monotony of having to do it over and over again, or having to do only details over and over again for forever. You know, like
Yeah, no,
if that's
I
what
get
your
it.
job is. Yeah, like so it just, but I appreciated my time there because I, as you say, like you pick up skills from every single place. So I understand furniture much more now that I've gone through that process. It's just not a process I'd go through again. But yeah, it was something interesting, but it also let me know what I liked and what I didn't like. And so I definitely know that I'm better with designing full spaces and bringing things together rather than only details.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Like even in civil engineering, you have like seven different types of civil engineers, right? So you have
Yeah.
structural, geotechnical, water resource, traffic engineers, right? So on and on, right? So some steel structural engineers who deal with steel
Yeah.
hate doing geotechnical work because soil is such an on I wouldn't say unforgiving, but it just doesn't work. Like when you have steel, you know the properties of steel and it doesn't change, right? It is
Yeah.
very, orderly in the way it moves and behaves. Soil is just an unruly kid, and you can't it's like putting a square peg in a round hole. Some
Yeah.
geotechnical hate just the monotony of how stringent steel is. Whereas you can come with a more estimating type approach with geotechnical, right? Because you have
Mm,
say factors of three or four. There's different ways to approach the problem. Whereas in steel, this is how you do it. This is how it's
yeah.
gonna get done. This is how you need to do it. This is how you detail steel. Where it's
Yeah.
solid, like, and it has a little bit of clay. We can play around with this model. Let's see which one works out the best. And some people it's just not their thing to do geotechnical, and
Yeah.
geotechnical steel is just not their thing. So like you said, work by doing. For me, math was like a tough subject at one point, and I had a really good math teacher who was like, listen, Ramon, how do you approach your problem? I was like, yeah, I look at it on the board, and then I go home and I look at it, and then I try it. I get to a point where it's hard, and then I stop. And he's like, but I want you to keep doing that process, because if you don't do it, or if you just look at the problem and don't practice it, you won't know what you're not good at, and I can't help you from
Mm,
that. So even if you don't finish the first problem, do the second one, do the third one, do the fourth one, and see where you get stuck. I can help you from that moment onwards, right?
mm,
Most teachers just was they were very good at math innately, so they just
yeah.
can't get on the same page as you. He was
Yeah.
bad at math, became good at math, so I was like, okay, there
Mm,
I can get good at math because he did it, and he was doing his going after his PhD in math just to show
wow.
that you can, yeah, you can do it if you put the work in. So yeah,
Mm,
theory is great, but executing, putting yourself in the fire, like you
yeah.
go through your dream, your plan, but the execution, the dream and the plan is only supposed to help you set up execution. You only know
Exactly.
what you know until you execute on it. It doesn't mean anything until you actually have to do it. So that's
Yeah.
cool, man.
Yeah.
So now, what would you think while you were developing yourself, right? What you consider tips or things you did to get over procrastination so you could execute? Like,
Sorry,
what
come
were you?
again. It was breaking a bit.
Yeah, no. So what tips would you have, or what did you do? Because I think a lot of people, like I said, struggle with executing a plan, right? Like,
Mm,
how do you go about your process of executing? Like, is it like you wake up early in the morning? Is it like you have a set schedule, you follow your schedule? Like, how do you go about executing things you need to get done?
yeah. And this is it's good because I really have struggled with procrastination. And with it's very interesting because I grew up in a very goal setting family. So every year, my mom would make us write down our goals for the year. And I'm talking, this was since I can remember, since I was a child. Like, it didn't matter that I was in primary school. I needed to tell my mother what my goals were for the year. And so every year we would travel to our village, our dad's village in Benue. So when I don't know how what you say in the Caribbeans, but we call what I know in the West they call it the countryside. Where we
Okay.
say yeah, so it's like yeah, so we go to the countryside. So it's nice and it's quieter and you know, we have a lot of family time. And then before New Year's, like the New Year's Eve, we sit down and we used to write down our goals. And it was all good. Um, and it is good that I've grown up with that mindset, like that goal setting mindset. But I've learned over the past say 3 to 5 years that I've had to update that knowledge. So while goals are good, I've realized that I need to I need to build systems. And even beyond that, I need to embody identity change in order to actually move things forward. So say your goal is to, and I'm getting this from like, I listen to people like James Clear, Myron Golden, Jim Rohn, Atomic Habits, you know. So like your goal could be exactly. Your goal could be to clean your room, but if you don't deal with your messy habits, um, you're just going to have a dirty room, you know, the
Right.
next day. So I've had to learn how to deal with. So with procrastination in general, systems help me with that. But beyond systems, identity change has really it really is the thing. Um, that pulls me forward towards the goal, if you will. So I'd use the example of, say, one of my goals this year has been to pass a French exam, a certain French exam. But beyond passing that exam, the goal, the identity change really is to become bilingual because a bilingual person will pass that exam, you know. So I need to become a person who speaks French fluently. And in order to do that, there are the systems that I've put in place, there are the classes that I have to go to every day, there's a self study that I need to do every day. And those systems, I need to submit myself to the systems, you know, they have to be larger than myself. They have to be larger than myself. They have to be automatic, frictionless. And so that really is what I've been able to use to deal with procrastination. So it's not for me, it's not just about the goals, it's really about the identity change and then the system and then the goals.
I love that you said that because I I
Say again?
um I, I said I love that you said that mainly
Yeah,
because I think people get caught up on like the goal itself and part of the
yeah.
podcast right about always say invert the problem, right? So instead of focus
Mm,
on getting to that goal, just focus on the things that are impairing you from getting to the goal, and in theory you're going to get to the goal faster because you're moving a lot
mm,
more with your time, right? So for instance, if you have your goal is to get to Jamaica to from Jamaica to London on a ship and your ship has holes in it, it's much harder than a ship that doesn't have holes in it, right? So
yeah,
just focus, instead of focusing on getting to Nigeria on the ship, just focus on fixing the holes in your ship. Innately you're going to move faster than
yeah,
focusing just that alone. So you just start weeding out all the inefficiencies that you normally do. And
yeah,
innately, just by doing that, you're going to move faster, right? So,
yeah.
like in track and field, some athletes on a 100-meter run, it looks like they're running faster at the end.
Mm,
They're just decelerating a lot slower than everyone else. They're
hmm,
they're focused. They're focused on their form, and just by focusing on your form and running much more cleaner at the end, and not pushing hard, but just focus on high strides, hands in the right place, and just focus on those smaller details. The person who's
yeah.
just trying to muscle their way to the end is going to move slower because it's about
Mm,
efficiency. It's efficiency towards the end. That's
yeah,
when it look like you're moving faster than everyone else. Everyone else is just decelerating at a faster rate than that person,
yeah.
right? So it's like it's sometimes
Interesting.
yeah, it's like you think of this goal and you put so much anxiety on the goal, and then you're like, oh, I never do what I need to do today, and you're just like, I always think 1% better each day. That's
Mm-hmm.
I can do 1% better. Like you said, atomic habits. The math keeps
Yeah.
mathing, right?
Yeah.
So on my board, I have 1.01 raised to 365. So
Mm,
that's 1%, and 365 is 365 days. So that
mm,
works out 37, which means you get a 37x of whatever you decide to do by doing it
mm.
1% better each day. Like,
Yeah.
whatever that is. If it means I'm
Yeah.
studying for something and I've been procrastinating for 2 weeks, I just need to open the book. So my goal today is to open the book.
Yes.
It, just
Yep.
get the
And
book.
it's so like counterintuitive because it's like I can't just open the book or I can't just put on my gym clothes and go to the door and come
Right.
back. But it really does work.
It does. It really does work. Like, you're like, because the moment you get, so that you have like the neurochemistry of your body is that your dopamine, which is a feel good drug for achieving goals, right? So I always think about a dopamine ladder, right? So you want to
Yeah.
set tangible, achievable goals so you can get a small dopamine spike along the way level, because that's what drags you to the goal
Yeah.
neurochemically. That's what keeps you motivated and focused, right? So you get these small drips of dopamine, you can ladder your way to the goal, versus like if the ladder steps are too big, like study and pass the exam, then you're dead. You're dead in the water. It's never going to
Yes.
happen.
It's never going to happen.
You have a bad day, someone's going to piss you off on the road. They're going to pull in front of you. You're going to have a terrible time, at work, something you didn't follow up on
Yep.
or follow up on, and then that's it. That goal is gone. Kick it down, kick rocks. So,
Yeah. So
yeah,
true.
no. So how do you so what programs do you use at work now? Are you guys using Revit? Is it the AutoCAD based platform that you guys
Um,
use?
yeah, so we where it worked, it was more AutoCAD based, but I think that was just specific to that company. So personally, I use AutoCAD a lot. I was
Mhm,
trained in now I was trained in drafting. So I don't know if the universities are still doing that, but like they forced us like no computer aided design for like the first 2 years. I think even
mhm,
well, no, for the entire time that I was in university, we couldn't present work that was
mhm,
computer aided design. So you could do your computer aided design, but you couldn't present it um, to, during your jury and your crits and all that while I was in um, my bachelor's. But we were trained on how to use CAD, so and AutoCAD specifically. Um, I think I self trained on I mean, when you say self-trained, somebody obviously helps you, but
Right.
what I mean is I wasn't trained on SketchUp, so I was self-trained on just like friends and internet and stuff. And
YouTube
Revit as
University.
say again?
I said YouTube University.
Exactly, YouTube University. So, with everything else, with Revit and SketchUp, those are kind of the things that I use. But so yeah, I think offices really do use Revit a lot more these days. But I mostly use AutoCAD, SketchUp. I do a bit of Revit. Post production, it depends on the kind of project, but a little bit of Photoshop if it's required for the project. I'm finding myself use a bit of Canva these days
I
for
love
like
them.
move. Yeah, like I wasn't really into it, but these past few months, I'm like, okay, Canva is not bad, and they're really doing a lot with
Yep.
like upping it with the apps, the AI apps, and all those things. So it's great for mood boards, and just for everything really. Small flyers, making things for LinkedIn. It's really good.
I used to find it so annoying to use Photoshop just like to get
Yeah.
stuff out in the background and like change the background lighting, or Canva
Mm,
just makes it so much easier. I mean, I think right
yes.
now Adobe realizes that, and they're using a lot more intuitive tools to make it a
Mm,
lot more, because there's a lot of friction. But I think some people have, and I found this a lot, people have a design mind. A lot of people have very good design mind, but they might not have the technical skills
technical
to
skill.
execute
Yeah.
the design. So, for instance, there's a ton of kids who would have done architecture in school, right? But because they weren't good at technical drawing, they just gave up on it, right? But the
Mm,
reality is, like, who's using set squares and T squares anymore and putting powder on paper? That's like the technical nuance of that class, but they would have been good architects who know how to plan a space, or they have a great plan in
mm,
mind, or be
mm.
able to communicate well and understand the vision, the big vision of the whole holistically what the client wants, but they get caught up on technical details like using a set square, right? Or not knowing the
Yeah.
difference between number two pencils. So, the more you get rid of the friction points of the technical nuances of dealing with it, you more you allow people into the industry, right? So
Yeah.
I know a lot of people know who love Canva who would have never picked up Photoshop because it would just kill
Yeah.
them, and then no, instead of having to go to a graphic designer, they could just do it themselves because they have the
Yeah.
vision of what they want. They just couldn't do it before. So
Yeah.
I love Canva, and I seen Canva became what it was now. I had it for a long time, and they
Yeah.
keep adding new and new tools to it. And
Yeah, I was using it as well maybe 6, 7 years ago, but when it was just like basic, just like
right,
to make a flyer or something.
yeah. When you work at work, do you end up going to the sites, or you have to do RFI or deal with RFI requests from the contractors, or is it mostly like
Um,
big design?
is it mostly like
Big picture design. I know you have different nuance of architects. Some architects deal with like the
okay,
big scope, and then you have like the technical architects that deal with the R5 responses day to day.
yeah. So honestly, both. So
Okay.
this, I would
Okay.
say that this is kind of the benefit of working in an outfit that's not too big, like a medium-sized company.
Mm, okay.
Um, you really have access to this to work that is to different kinds of work, and then to work that's in different phases, so or different skills, let me say. So like you have work where you're you're dealing with the big picture, you're not dealing with the, or maybe you're managing a team of people where say I've just done like the big picture design, and then
Right.
somebody is doing the 3D for it, um, to for the presentation to the client, and so I have to manage that. But there's also the 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 projects I've been on when I've detailed say 10 bathrooms in a building, and so I've been the one detailing every single the placement of the sink, and
Mm,
the placement of the toilet, and the distance of the drain from the wall. I've done that level of detail as well. And I've had projects as well where I was the project monitor, not manager, monitor. So, or yeah, manager as well, or monitor. And so like I've received RFIs from um just different stakeholders in the projects, whether it's the contractor, whether it's client, whatever, and had to deal with that, or had to deal with reviewing variations from the contractor, reviewing that, as well as with the quantity surveyor, because I'm not a quantity surveyor, but sitting
right.
down with the quantity surveyor and having to look at the VOQ and decide whether a variation is worthy or not, or is valid or not. So I've done. It's like being an architect. Really, you have your fingers in every pot, and it's I really think it's a blessing to be able to work in a medium-sized company or a smaller company. I
Yeah.
haven't worked in a really large corporation before, but I've heard that sometimes you might be relegated to doing certain type of work, and that's just it. Like that's your role. Whereas in this kind of thing, it's kind of a blessing and a curse because you get some projects you're just like, oh, I'm just waiting for this project to finish. Like I don't want to receive one more complaint, one more
Right.
snag list from this site.
These contractors are
But it
contracting usually.
Oh
I
my
said, usually
goodness. Gosh, some contractors would drive you crazy. But yeah, so um it really is a blessing to be able to work. And I would advise anyone who is like just looking for work to really look into small to medium sized businesses where you will have breadth of work because you, even for your portfolio's sake, like to be able to say I've worked on this, it'll give you the opportunities that you've never had before.
Yeah, no, I second that. I mean, I do work in a pretty big organization, but what we did, especially with my career and the persons I follow, because we do data centers, a lot of the projects are
Okay.
going concurrently. They're going at the same time, right? And then they're
Mhm.
not massive. I've been on a big project before where it's multiple billions of dollars. And like you said, you have this one person dealing with fire alarm, then you have one person dealing with structural, then you have one person dealing with concrete, and you kind of have
Mm,
to divvy the work that way because one person can't handle all those trades. They have their own RFIs. It's just a massive project that you can't have one person do, right? When on these smaller projects that I've been working on recently, like smaller data center renovations or out the ground builds that are just 20,000 square feet, you get to put your hands on everything: fire alarm,
mm,
structural, steel,
yeah.
network engineering, roofing, waterproofing. You get to procure the project. You get to buy the project from the contract drawings that you
Mm,
produce, and then take it from design development. So we even get past the okay. Here's 100% CDs. Provide me the cost for this 100% CDs. We're there even before that. We're in there with the architects now in the design development to kind of tailor how it would look like in the execution of that project, right? Because
mhm.
no, don't use that detail. That detail is going to cost us all heartache. I'm going to send you three RFIs that you don't want to see. So let's just not use that detail. Let's just save ourselves
Save
the
the
pain,
trouble.
save yourself the trouble of me having to do that. And like I said, there's just a little bit of like the contractors at the end of the day, they're the one executing it. They're the ones physically executing it. So I just there's going to be some detailing that they are going to know more of because that's what they do every day. They work with the tools. And my
Yeah.
job is to just get everyone to play nice in the sandbox. So I'm talking with the
Mm.
architect. I was like, I understand why you feel you want that
Yeah.
detail, but
But
there's there's a cost associated with it. There's I have a schedule that I need to meet. I don't, I'm gonna call the meeting for tomorrow. I know, it's short minute notice meeting. I get it. I'm sorry, but we gotta get this, hump across. And so yeah,
yeah.
that's the role I play now as a project manager, right? It's like I understand where the architect is coming from or why he wants certain details, and it's like
Yeah.
picking up things that make sense. Like this is a no, this has to be done the way they're asking it. Or there's other ones where I'm like, I think this was kind of got put in at the end, and I don't think this was 100% thought of. But let's work through it together. I'm not here to
Yeah.
beat you. I want to get I want to get my job done. You want to get your job done. But I have met other contractors or project managers where they're just like, like beating the architect over the head. And I'm like, listen, at the end of the day, you're going to get a punch list. And everything, everything, that person's gonna have their moment. So let's just play nice. Let's get everything done. And if I
Yeah.
can early, I can solve a lot of problems later because what happens a lot of the times why you find contractors are always so miserable. I get it. I know why. Because if I send you or side, right? I send you a submittal, right?
Mhm.
No one moves until that submittal is approved. right?
Yeah.
Once that submittal gets approved, then the guys go out and start looking and procuring it, right? It's going to take
Yeah.
time. That guy is not going to get the email. He's going to send it to his manufacturer. His manufacturer now is going to go to his guy to look to see if we have it, right? So there's like 5 downstream things that are not moving until I get the approval, right?
Yeah.
And then there are other 5 things that are going concurrently that if this approval doesn't happen, it's going to stop production on these 5 guys, right? So say for instance, the electrician needs the approval so he can buy his conduit, he can start running his piping. And then also the concrete guy is already approved. The sheetrock guy is already approved. They're running. This guy's
Yeah.
just sitting there and waiting. I'm watching him wait. And I know it's going to take him 2 or 3 weeks to get this stuff. Then he's going to rush at the end. Then it's going to look like a hot mess. Then we're going to rip it out. Then I'm going to have to explain to the client why I never managed it right. Why is he paying an additional cost? Then he's going to tell me to kick rocks. Then I'm going to have to tell the electrician, per your contract, you're supposed to have done this right. So guess what? Kick rocks to fix it. And I'm like, you know what? Let's just get this approval done early so we can get past this problem. And
Yeah.
I used to play document control. So you call it
Oh, okay.
money. So the first thing I did as a assistant project manager or project engineer was document control, which is same
Mm.
thing like monitoring, like get all the stuff from all the trades, all the contractors, send it into the architect, and if the things don't come back in time, right? Or things come back and they don't have the right. I've seen walls being built, and I'm like, that's not the right drawing. You're building the wall to. That's not, here's the right drawing. Pull that wall down before you embarrass all of us. So every project
I've
meeting I have,
I've seen it too. I've seen it too. Like, why is this wall here?
and you was like, so I'm like, at the ridiculousness of things that happen in the execution, I always try because I'm further upstream. Especially as a project manager, you get to see the downstream pains that people go through. I was like, half the
Mm.
downstream pains can get alleviated by being urgent upstream, right? Because then that gives you time. And
But
when people have,
the design work takes time, and you
I
you
know,
guys need to give us time.
I get
Magic
that.
doesn't just happen.
I know, I get it. But you know what? That's so when you put in together a project schedule, right?
Mhm.
That's for the owner because it's different. Like it's not like we're doing design build. I don't have a direct contract with an architect, right? You have a
Mhm.
contract with the owner. The owner is holding my feet to the fire for the time of the project being done, right?
Yeah.
So owner also has to understand that the architect requires more time to get their job done so we can get our job done. But that's not what
Yeah.
happens. This is what the owner does. I send the RFI, I send the submittal. You need the time. I get that. But then I'm get held to the fire if you take an extra week or 2 weeks. They don't add back the extra 2 weeks to my schedule. They don't. You know what they do? Oh, still finish it on time. No, 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 no. I don't care how long it took the architect to get the response. That's your problem. Man the job with more people. And it's like you can't stuff 5 pounds into a 1 pound bag. Like, no matter how much manpower you put on a job, you can't get back time, right? So, as a
Yeah.
project, I always think of you're an orchestra leader, right? Timing is
Yeah.
important. The violinist needs to be on time, or we're going to be off beat, and it's just going to sound like it's not going to be music anymore. It's just going to be noise. So,
Yeah.
so that's where at first when I came into the industry, 'cause I came from the design side, as structural engineering. That's what I studied in school, right? So I
Mhm.
innately understand where a designer is coming from. Of course, you're not even on site sometimes, right? So and your
Mhm.
license, so of course you deserve the additional time before you send something off to make sure it's right. Like,
Yeah.
but then when you come on site, and I'm like, all right, I get why half these people are miserable. Miserable because someone has to once they get their answer, No, you have to go execute what the answer was. And sometimes I'm not, the answer isn't that great. Sometimes I've had, response. I'm like, oh, here we go again. All right, we're gonna have to call a meeting on this. This is not gonna work. This detail is not gonna cut it, guys. We're not doing
Hey,
this.
hey, hey, I'm going to stand for my profession. I don't know what you're
I love it.
talking about. I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm going to stand for my profession and say that you guys just didn't understand the detail, okay?
All
That's
right,
what it
fair,
was. That's what it
fair point.
was, okay?
But you know what? At the end of the day, that's where a good project manager comes in,
Yeah,
right?
of course. Like you have to bring the whole team together and
That's
everybody
your
has
job.
to put their egos aside, like to be able to
100.
work together really. It was in a podcast that because I run a podcast as well, and I was talking to another architect, and just talking about, I was actually talking about how he deals with like structural designers and stuff, and it's just
Right,
interesting, the not just structural designers, just team professionals in general. And it's just
right.
interesting, um, the relationships that you form. And
Yeah.
in my experience, I found that the best relationships really are, of course, with people who, have a high level of knowledge of what they're doing, but more so with people who know how to work as a team. And I think a big part of working as a team is putting your ego aside because it's not always
Yep.
going to be your answer that ends up being the solution. And you have to understand that as the architect, as the structural designer, as the electrical engineer, as a project manager, whoever you are, like it's the superior argument needs to rule at the end of the day. So it's
Right.
coming together and making a plan that works for the goal, which is the project. And you see some people who are adamant about
On
their
winning the
idea.
point. Yeah.
Exactly. Who are adamant about their idea and not so much about the project, which is, it's a bit sad, and it just makes for a very frictionful
Experience.
project. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you because I found that my when I've seen other persons manage projects, and at the end of the day, everybody has a skill. Like I think of it like an
Mm,
American team or a sports team,
mm,
or even a Formula One team. Any team requires everyone has their cognitive strengths and weakness, right? But together we're better. Together, not
yeah,
separate, not arguing
yeah,
with each other, bullying each other's points down because you might not be privy to certain information that's causing the
yeah,
issue why you see it from your everyone has a blind spot. But if we're all together at the table trying to solve it together, when they say 1 plus 1 equals 2, in design or construction, 1 plus 1 equals 3. Honestly, you get so much
mm,
better when you have everybody together thinking through a problem, right? And on our project,
yeah,
it's a limited time and a limited resource to have all these specialized skill in one room. So why are we wasting it arguing about the whose point is better argued? No, what's going to be the solution to this problem that's going to make our stakeholder? We both have the same
yeah,
stakeholder. They hired us for the reason, and they're spending a lot of money to get their product built, and
mm,
all
mm,
gonna have pie in our face if your design doesn't look great and my install looks terrible. So why are we here arguing? We should be solving problems and moving forward, right?
yeah,
And that innately in construction or project management or architecture, because we don't usually work on the same team. You have a design team, right? It's kind of and then you have the construction team. Again, it's not like we're working for Apple and we're in the same building the same product. We are
mm,
building the same product, but we're not in our check isn't being cut by the same person, right? Like in Apple,
mm.
it's Steve Jobs or whoever else, and the design
So
and
do you
manufacturing.
so do you not have like access, I wouldn't say access, but like do you not routinely like meet with the architects or with the design
Always,
team?
always
Do you?
weekly.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we have a weekly
Okay.
call, or and like I said, we have a weekly. Most project charters, you have a weekly call with your design team, and then I always get friendly with the document controller, not just the architect, because you might send over the RFI, but if that person hasn't flipped it to the structural engineer in a timely fashion, right? You might be angry at your structural engineer taking 2 weeks. It might be sitting in this person's
Mm,
email for the first week. He didn't even send it, or she
mm,
didn't send it to the
mm.
architect or the engineer. No, that person is under the gun because they got 2 weeks to respond, but it really only got 3, 4 days, right? Because it was
Yeah.
sitting with the document controller. So I always try my best to find out who's the document controller. And the moment I send it, I'm calling that person like, hey, I just sent this
Yeah.
over. You can sit on this one a little bit, but the second one that I'm sending over is hot. This one, I need it like the next 2 weeks. I can't afford a delay on this one. It's critical path.
Mm,
That prioritizes their, their list of things they need to send over to who, and add some sort of like urgency to that specific one. Everything can't be urgent. It can if you don't manage your project properly, because now you're at the end and you don't have any time.
yeah.
You start that process early as a PM, it makes the experience a lot better. For me, I always say like you're
Mm,
the captain of the ship, and your job is to make sure the engine room mechanic feels happy and content with getting his supplies on time. The persons who's at the helm of the ship with you are happy. The cargo is gonna
yeah.
get. The client is happy. Everyone is moving succinctly. You're running a tight ship. That's what the term means.
Yeah.
Running a tight ship. Everything is in order. Everything is accounted for. But if you're just like at the wheel and you're just watching it go awry, then of course everyone is going to be panic on the ship, right? Like everyone, no
Mm,
one's going to trust anybody. Everyone's going to start backbiting and fighting with each other. It's going to be a problem. So order isn't made by
yeah.
accident. Order is something you have to make happen. That's why it's called law and order. And in
Mm,
thermodynamics, they had this the second law of thermodynamics is called the law of entropy, right? So the law of entropy is everything tends to disorder, right? If you have an ice cube, it's an orderly structure. You add heat to it, it becomes a liquid,
don't
it becomes
melt.
less orderly. Add some more heat to it, it becomes a gas, it becomes less orderly. Our system or body is very ordered. When you die, you become ashes, less orderly. Everything tends to disorder. There's no combination of you being messy in your room that's going to make your room neat. Something or someone needs to provide order, right?
Yeah.
And so if things are going awry, who is the person who was designated to provide order, and why aren't you doing your job? And the person who's
Mm,
supposed to do that to me is the project manager. So I always take if things are not going I take ownership. Like if it's not going in an orderly fashion, there's something I'm not doing that was supposed to have been
yeah.
done, right? And yeah, so if you ever find that a job is going awry, just push back, not even to the owner or the contractor. Find out who the PM is and hold him
Yeah.
accountable or her accountable to provide an order. Because that's their job. That's literally
Yeah.
what they're
Yeah.
supposed to do,
So
you
we get
know?
paid for. Yeah.
So they get paid for it. So yeah, if something is going awry, just I know my PMs are gonna be angry at me. Be like, "Why are you telling the architect that?" But it's all right. so, so how do you go about dealing with like low energy moments? Like I know our industry can be very stressful. There's a lot of
Mm.
requirements for architects. Contractors sending late emails, barking in all caps, all red what they need. Like so, how do you deal with like those low energy moments when you wanna just unwind and get restarted?
That's an interesting question for me because I've had to learn to listen to my body.
Mm,
If you ask my husband and my friends, they will tell you I'm infamous for not not listening to the signs, and after a while, if you don't listen to the signs, your body's just gonna like just
right,
gonna stop. It's like, okay, you're not going out today because I told you 3 days ago to
right.
take a rest and you didn't. So I've had to learn. that before it becomes critical, when your car is showing you the check engine light, don't ignore
Yeah.
it, don't put a sticker over it. Actually stop and check the engine. So I don't believe that sick days or leave days should be used only when, it's critical, only when you're like
Mhm.
at the hospital with a drip on your arm or whatever. Like, if
Right.
you feel a bit off, then take some time and just, take 2 days, and or take 2 days before the weekend so you can have a full weekend. And actually, and when you take off the time, actually take it off. Like, don't take it off the time, and, take off the time. Obviously, you can't just leave your project to like be
Right.
flapping in the wind. So properly hand over to somebody, um, and give them proper instructions, and you all need to be contacted in the case of, in if it gets to such and such point. But um handover, and this is why it's important to work as a team and to work with people who see the work, as everybody's responsibility,
Right.
which I'm very blessed to work with people who understand teamwork, and it's not like, oh, this is my project and that's your project and I can't know. So if you do have that relationship with your colleagues, hand over properly, take some time, um and just try your best to listen to your body, because every time that I haven't done that, I've ended up, having I didn't take 2 days off when that would have really refreshed and revitalized me, and then I ended up being off the job for 2 weeks, and it was worse.
Right.
So yeah, that's my thing.
No, no, I think I also struggle with that too. Like not wanting to take the time off because you think it's just going to go completely awry. But like you said, with your systems thinking, like if you set up a proper system of handoff or
Yeah.
communicate in a way where you know everyone is set up in a way where if there's an answer, someone can provide an answer. I always involve my senior project managers in my projects. I might CC them on the
Hmm.
email, just kind of run like big picture thought patterns to them so that if I do need to leave and we need to, it's resource management. If I need to go somewhere for a week, that person can hold the fort down, colloquially, until I come back because
Yeah.
they're aware of where the project stands, right? They are
Yeah.
aware of what are the big things that we're doing. We're commissioning at this moment. So anything that comes up across for commissioning, we got to take care of it now versus
Yeah.
uh, close up documents. That can wait until I come back. But if it's a commissioning request or some information needed while the guys are on site commissioning, can you jump on this request? I might not be able to get to my phone. And so just having that kind of project handoff midstream while you have to take your break and you're doing the same for that
Yeah.
person, then no one comes back
Exactly.
to a fire drill, right? And that it wipes out your whole time off, right? You come back,
Exactly.
things are in order, things are moving along, and everyone's happy. So that took a while for me to learn because I just
Mm,
innately just think things are just going to go awry. And because of that, I end up just like jumping in and just wanted to manhandle everything. And at some point, you go like, all right, there's always going to be the work. The work is always going to be there.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
that system of not just dealing with juggling the plates in the air and wishing it doesn't break. You got to find a way to
Yeah.
handle a couple plates and put it down and make sure it works while you're not there. And that part was hard for me to learn too. It's just like figuring out a
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's just part of the deal. And you start and you understand this too. It almost becomes like a project. If you really invested in it, it feels like you're taking care of your child or a kid or something else.
Mm.
But if you care about your work, you want to do a good job. No one comes to work
Mhm.
and to do a good job if they're in their right profession, right? Or they're, I would say,
Yes.
they're guy. So the Japanese call
Yeah.
this thing called guy, right? Which is your
Yeah.
life's purpose, what you're good at, what the world needs, what they'll pay you for, right? And so at the end of the day, I feel like I'm in my ikigai. I feel that's the same thing for
Oh,
you
that's
based on,
great.
what you said on this podcast. And
Yeah.
I look at persons to invite. I look to see if they're in the ikigai. Are you happy with what you're doing? Like, do you care about what you do, right? Like, did you
Yeah.
spend time crafting it and becoming the best version of yourself in your chosen profession, right? You choose it. No one has to choose this for you. You chose it. Like, do you like it?
Hmm.
So no, I'm happy
Yeah.
you came. Um, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on, Mimi.
Oh, same. Thank
I'm sure you're going to be on next time when you're back. If you ever come to New York, feel free to just let me know. We
I
can definitely.
will. I will. I've been once, so next time I come, I will definitely call you up and we'll do this in person.
And I have on my bucket list to get to Nigeria, Ghana. I need to
Oh,
come over.
nice.
Yeah, no, I definitely. I did my ancestry, and it was like 85% Nigerian. This is like, all right, I got.
Hey!
I'm like, all right,
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, come to your homeland.
I gotta come back. I gotta come back to home, see what's going on, meet my people. So
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation, Ramon. Thank you.